Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Confessions of a Fitness Manager. I'm Stacy here with.
Jessica.
I was like, I've been wanting to do that this whole time.
I didn't know where you were going with that.
I'm Stacy Halden, and you go, I'm Jessica. So Jessica's here. The first thing we talk about before we start the topic, which today is onboarding part two, we talk about our beverages. So Jessica, what are you drinking today?
Oh, Stacy, thank you for asking. I am drinking a lovely rosé. Cheers. What are you drinking today?
I was pausing so my dog would stop barking.
I
I
heard I heard the dog. He's very excited about my rosé. She's very excited about my
Very
rosé.
excited. Yes, rosé all day for Miss Oakley, my dog. I'm drinking sparkling water. I prefer my flavor of choice is clementine. I think it is like mandarin
Oh, okay.
clementine,
Sounds
and
fancy.
their like mineral sparkling water is like the best. It's so good, really cheap.
All
Um,
right.
so if you have a Trader Joe's near you, visit.
I love I love the timing.
We have been talking this whole time, everyone, and she's been just fine until right now. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
go check on her real quick, and I'll be right back.
Oh, I love the timing. It is so great. Cheers, everyone. What are you drinking today?
So the story is, whenever someone delivers a package, I have to open the door and hold on to her so she can see who delivered it,
Of course.
just
Of
to make sure
course.
that they're okay, that everyone's alive. So somehow we have three Amazon packages. I don't know what we have, but
Oh, I hope you ordered something fun.
I do too. Um, okay, back to our presentation of today's topic. Welcome again to our
Oh, I love it.
podcast, Confessions of a Fitness Manager, where we love to share our stories as fitness managers and experience over time. And we also like to enhance those stories with some fun and real life experience, which hopefully is entertaining for you and helps you feel less alone and recognizing, wow, that's happened to me or has had something similar happen to me, because it's a really interesting role we play as fitness leaders. And then we like to talk about more practical, tactical tips and systems to help you continue to lead your team. So,
Mhm.
last episode, part one of onboarding, we talked about after the interview process, you've selected this person to join your team. How do you make that first day really special for them? What are some ways you can continue to train them on that first day, first week, first month? And you do a lot of hand holding during that time. So we wanted to be really, really specific on that time being more of you really involved in helping them understand the ways of your facility, the ways of your team, the expectations. And so now we're hitting part two, which is more as you're training them for the actual act that they're going to be doing every day, whether that's teaching classes, working with clients privately as a personal trainer or Pilates teacher. What does that look like? And then letting them loose, basically, letting them go, letting them start seeing clients, letting them start teach classes. What does that look like? How often do you check in with them? And what are some ways to make sure that they still feel motivated and they still feel and act and behave in the same way they do in those first few weeks, which we all know are like the first few days of school where you dress up really nice. And then as the school year progresses and you're less motivated, you may not look the same or act the same. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen with our team. So first, Jessica and I are going to share some experiences we've had while onboarding instructors and trainers in the second stage, this part two. So I'll let Jessica go first in sharing her fun story.
Oh, thank you, Stacy. So my story is about a personal trainer that I've had somewhat recently during his onboarding. So we hired him, we were getting him through training. One of the things he was going to be doing was teaching a small group training class. So we went over it, what the class format looked like, and then I wanted him to experience the class. So it was like a 30-minute like boot camp style circuit. So I set up all the different stations, and I was going to walk him through it just so he could experience what the class should look and feel like before he went on to teach it himself. So I remember telling him ahead of time, you can make this workout as hard as you want or as easy as you want. It's totally up to you. I just really want you to get a feel for the different exercises, for the flow of the class, so that way you can go ahead and start teaching it to your clients in the next coming weeks. So we got through the warm up, and the first exercise was rowing. So I bring him over to the rower, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead and take a seat, and you're gonna row for X amount of time. And I think I pointed to the rower, and he sat in the seat and pushed himself back and propelled himself backwards off of the rower, legs flying over his head. And then he tumbled back and landed next to the rower, in a ball, and looked up at me. And I'm just like, what just happened? What just happened? And he was like, oh, sorry, I didn't want to step on your hand. And I'm like, step on my hand?
Did he? So he didn't strap himself in. He did not put his.
No. And I'm just like, and I mean, to preface all this, I even asked him, I demoed all of the 8 different exercises, and he had said he had used all the equipment before. So I wasn't concerned at the time that he had never used a rower before, but now I'm like, maybe he really didn't, but didn't want to say. And I'm like, where did you think my hand was? Because I just thought it was ridiculous. And I'm like, okay, sit down, strap your feet in, grab hold, and push yourself back. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around him, pressing himself and flipping over backwards off of the rower. And then we get through a couple other exercises, and then we get to kettlebell swings. And at this point, we're 4 exercises in, and I can see that he's really trying to push himself hard. He really wants to prove himself and his athletic ability, which is fine, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for just a basic understanding of the exercise. And so we get to kettlebell swings, and he starts doing single arms, and he's catching it, midway, which is fine. I'm like, that's a great option. You can take it up a notch and do single arms. And then he just lets go of it, and it goes flying, and I have to jump out of the way. And he's like, oh, sorry. And I'm just like, what is going on here? What is going on here? So first he fell off the rower, and then he threw the kettlebell at me unintentionally. I think he was embarrassed. I hope he was embarrassed. It was unreal. And then I'm like, and then once we finished the whole class, I just told him, I'm like, that was a good first attempt. I'm going to want to try this again with you before you start teaching the class, because Stacey, I wish I had a video camera during this. It was just something I had never expected. I really didn't expect anyone to fly backwards and somersault backwards off of a rower, and I never expected anyone to throw a kettlebell at me during a training. So
oh my gosh,
that was my onboarding.
I remember you telling me this story at when it was happening, because we stay in touch closely. And yeah, I've yet to have a kettlebell thrown at me. I mean, accidentally, but still, we think he would have learned from his first stumble off the rower. Don't impress, just learn.
Yeah. And I had said several times that I'm not trying to, judge him on his athletic ability. He can take whatever options he wants, as long as he can show a basic understanding of the 8 different exercises, and then we'll go from there. And yeah, if you want to do a single arm kettlebell swing, if that's a great choice for you, then more power to you, but then have control of it. You need to not be throwing that at your direction.
Oh my gosh, no.
That's my onboarding story. So I did take him through it another time after he had calmed down. And the second time I took him, it was with a couple other trainers, and he was still trying to show off. He didn't do, actually, you know what? I still think he did do the single arm swings, but I stood out of the way that time. He did not throw himself off of the rower, but then we were ending with a core segment, and I was just having him just hold the plank, 30 seconds just to hold the plank. And he's doing hip dips and shoulder taps. And I'm like, Brian, just hold the plank.
Oh
so
my
he was
gosh.
Just not following instructions.
Yeah.
Just not following instructions.
Yeah.
So that was round 2 of that one. But yeah.
Because by putting in all that effort, while you appreciate the effort, at the same time, that's not what the onboarding training is about.
No, absolutely. No, the onboarding was really just do you understand the exercises? Do you understand how this program should be taught? Yes or no? And he's demonstrating to me very early on that he either is not understanding what the programming should be, or he does not care what the programming should be. And so at that point, I'm trying to figure out which one is it, because I need to put the kibosh on that.
That is so true. So with something like that, actually, that's a perfect place to start. So for small group, or let's say personal training, what is your system for, you've done obviously step by step the training part for personal training. We went over that last episode, but what do you do? Because we do quite a few weeks of that with our both of our teams, you and I. What do
Definitely.
you do? I know I do mine virtually, but what do you do with like small group training or classes? What kind of protocol or training protocol do you do for that?
Yeah, so with small group training, we typically have a sit down just to go over what the different format is. Like this particular class is a 30-minute strength based circuit. And so we go over what the purpose is, the different exercises, what the different equipment is, and how it should be run. What's really cool about the particular class that I was teaching him was it's a month long small group, and that gets progressively harder each week. So it's a progressive based class, which is really fun. So we talked about how we make it progressive and the why behind it. Why we do this is so that way we know how to sell it to our participants. Once we get all the talking out of the way, then I'll take him up to the floor and I'll show him what each of the exercises are and just essentially demo what the class should be. So I'll coach him through it so he could
Mhm.
experience it. And then I'll write out essentially a demo class so that way he can practice off of that. And then I'll come a time, maybe like a week or so later, that I'll have a test out, so to speak, where I'll have him
Mhm.
teach me exactly what we've gone over.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. And then that's sometimes where we may have an instructor who, hopefully, if someone's taking over for someone else, it's for temporary reason, or if they are taking over for someone else is just moving on to a different day or time of a small group training or a large group fitness class. So my story is more in the long group fitness class or the larger group fitness class format. Um, and as Jessica and I were talking about our stories before this, off camera and off mic, we were recognizing that Jessica actually wasn't working at the health club with me at the time that this happened. So this is newer for her to hear as well. But I'm confident all of us have had this experience, whether it is private training or group fitness, where, and we've, I think, touched on this before in previous talking about hiring, is divas, people who, may
Yeah.
start out as a really rock star instructor, good teammate, good, helpful, amazing, like person to be with and work with all around. And then slowly over time, as they get so many pats on the back, so many people attending their classes, so as their ego starts to grow, so does the clinginess of the participation. And so in this particular experience, we had worked with an instructor who had actually left the facility. She actually hadn't left yet. She was about to leave the facility because she had become a manager at another location, basically like a fitness manager. And it was just a conflict of interest. We couldn't have her potentially poaching our instructors and vice versa. So she was pretty understanding of it when she would meet with me, right? Face to face. She was like, I understand, I'm really excited for this other opportunity. We were excited for her. It's sometimes a blessing if they grow and evolve into
Mhm.
doing a new role in the fitness industry. So she was moving on to that role as she was basically sharing with her classes. And there's really no right or wrong way to do this. Like, I can't give you all the answers of if someone is going to leave your facility because of those reasons. Um, and you're trying to kindly let them go slowly versus just saying, okay, like say, you could also do like day one, you find out she's going to oversee a team that is going to be a conflict of interest. It's like right next door to you. You could end it right
Yeah.
there, which may have been a better decision because she in turn told her class basically, they're letting me go because I have taken on this role at this other facility. Like it wasn't a nice announcement, basically. It wasn't on our side. It was very much us versus them. And so the participants of her class who were already upset that she was leaving were even more upset because they thought we were the bad guys. And then in comes the potential new instructor, which there was not enough that we could have paid that instructor, the poor person, to take over that class because it's tough. What I would say in that situation, if you're going through that, is to tell the instructor what's really happening. Be as transparent as possible, whether they meet the previous instructor or not, as they start to prepare to take over the class. make sure that they understand the feeling. This is the overall feeling of the participants you're walking into and you're about to teach. So week one, I will say, and it did happen to be another just interesting tidbit for all of you, which is most likely common among all of us, is it was that mid-morning like mom crowd also, which are very opinionated and challenging.
Very much so.
Yeah, and so she was really being thrown to the wolves, and we did our best to support her through it. So we educated her on the situation, really cheerleaded her to understand that we think you're actually going to be a better fit for that class, like really tried to help her feel confident. And it was scary for her, I'm sure. I can't imagine that first day going in knowing all of those things and teaching a class. And then I think the unfortunate part, or I guess the entertaining part of the story, is just the feedback that we would receive about her class that was just absurd, genuinely absurd. That, you know, things that they would say about her teaching style or how she was doing it. And majority of the time, as most of you know, if you're replacing a coach or an instructor, we all understand that we're all different human beings. Like there's not one of us is ever going to be the same, but the most upsetting thing for these participants was that she was not the other instructor. And it was a choreographed class, so that makes it even more challenging because she's going to choose different music because she's a different human being.
Right.
She's going to choose different steps and have more advanced or more lower intense steps depending on the music and how she feels it should go. And so the amount of feedback, the challenge was really hard. We saw a huge decline in attendance. But then what's so interesting is just knowing and being confident as a facility and being on the same page that that attendance will build back up, whether it's the same participants who were with the other instructor or not. So we have to just confidently know it will happen. The people who jive with that instructor more are going to come back. So it's not as entertaining as Jessica's. No one was throwing kettlebells or flying backwards off of a rower, but it's one that sticks with me because we had to ensure that we were there for that person. So that's where I think being present as a manager is really important. So we've talked about how Jessica brought on that coach to do small group coaching or training. And for group fitness and personal training, we're fortunate that we usually can look at their schedules ahead of time, know when they're going to be there for the day. Even though they are kind of ships in the night, you know, they're in and out of the facility, we can, for the most part, try to make sure we're on the fitness center floor to see them, whether it's in passing or to see their clients or to see their classes or to take their classes. So I think that's the second part. So I think after we've talked about part one, the onboarding piece, to me, I think the most important thing going forward is just that you're visible as a manager, which can be easier said than done because there's sessions 6 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning, and then you have sessions really late in the evening as well. So trying to find where you can fit those in. Do you have, Jessica, a cadence of when you try to see your team and in passing? And then we'll talk about team meetings soon too.
Yeah, so I am lucky where I have a small enough team that I typically am able to touch base with them individually on almost a daily basis. And I know that's not the case for everyone. At the health club you and I used to work at, there was a massive team, and I think we put it on our calendars like once a year for each of us to go and attend a class from all the instructors. That's how big our previous team was. So that we used a lot of Outlook then to make sure that we were connecting with our team. But my current team is very small, so I'm able to connect with them a lot more. So I do my best to we have an open door policy at my club, so I have quite a few trainers coming in and out of my office. I also like to go up onto the training floor. We have a trainer desk up there, and I'll just sit there and do some work up there from time to time just to be visible, because I want the trainers to know that I'm there for them and I see what's going on. And it's also an opportunity for me to do a little like sneaky evaluation. Not that I'm trying to stare down them or their clients while they're working, because I'm not trying to make especially the client feel uncomfortable, but just an awareness. So I know what's going on, and that way I can bring in some tips to the trainer about what they're doing or what they could be doing to improve their training session. And then we do have monthly trainer team meetings as well. But on a weekly and daily basis, I'm pretty visible with them. So just making sure that I have an open door policy where they can stop on it and talk to me, and seeing them, you know how it is being in a club. You're there all day, every day, it feels like. So I
Oh
tend to
my
see quite a
gosh.
bit of my team.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And so yeah, on that, since we're still, it's weird to be thinking, well, being visible and showing up on at the desk, like how is that onboarding? My answer to that is by attending classes, being at that's awesome. You have that desk up in the like personal training area.
Mm,
Being visible is just you basically holding the standard to what you onboarded them on. So you said, here are the expectations. If you just say
absolutely.
that to someone and they say yes, they are, I'm sorry, but they're going to fall into habits that they may have been doing before. And
Mm,
if those expectations are going to maybe stop being met, and then it's going to be weird if, as soon as those expectations aren't being met or they're making mistakes, then suddenly Jessica's at that desk at the top. You know what I mean? They're going to know, oh,
right.
shoot, I did something wrong.
Right.
And then that's when clients will become uncomfortable. Be like, who's this
Yeah.
girl who's never at that
Yeah.
desk, who's suddenly at this
Right.
desk? So it's
Yeah, and I
about,
don't want to associate myself with
yeah,
being so someone's in trouble because someone didn't do something right. So I don't want to
yeah,
associate myself that way. So I want to associate myself in a positive way where I'm just here for support, just here to get some work done. And if you have any questions, I'm here for you. So that's essentially why I would go up to that desk and hang out on the training floor.
yeah, I love that because that way it becomes consistent. People aren't necessarily worried about it. And then potentially we happen to see something or we happen to need to talk to someone about something. The
Hmm.
fact that we're always up there in a more positive light, like you said, or we're always attending classes, which is what Jessica and I always did, was if we couldn't necessarily stay for the whole class, we'd also make it a point to try to see the instructors in passing on their way to their classes, which is nice because then when they see us, just like Jessica said, it's not to associate something bad or they're about to get a talking
Right.
to. It's, oh, Jessica is probably just going to say hi and ask me how my day is going, or ask me about my
Yeah.
kids, or ask me about my birthday. Like, there are so many other things you can talk to these human beings about than just their job at that facility. So
Yeah.
I consider it a form of onboarding because it's basically you showing that you're still paying attention. You're still there and you need them to keep doing what they need to be doing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was actually something, Stacey, that you were always really good at our club, is being like, oh, it's 10:55. There's going to be an 11 o'clock class in 5 minutes. Let's go. I'm going to go take the downstairs studios. You take the upstairs studios, just so we can walk on by and say hi to the instructor. So that was always something you were
That
really
was
good at.
cool. That was really cool that we would do that. And we had to split up because there were
Yeah.
so many studios.
So many studios.
Yeah, and if you can, I mean, tools, like Jessica said, the tools we use were Outlook, and you get knee deep in, or waist deep, or chest deep in your email, and you're working on that, and you all of a sudden look up, and the time is, like you said, 10:55. If there's an 11 o'clock class or 12 o'clock class, like you're trying to make the rounds, but you have to just get away from that desk if you can, like pull
Hmm.
yourself away. Um,
Hmm.
the phone will be answered at some point. Like it'll be okay.
You can
So
always get back to your email. The email's
yeah,
not going anywhere.
yeah, but the instructor's only going to be there for an hour, right? And then they're
Right.
gone. They're out. So it's hard. I know it's hard for all of us, but if you can make it a habit, that's the biggest thing. So
Definitely.
habits to being visible, as we described those, I think that's a huge part to onboarding and checking in with your team. And then I'll let Jessica talk about team meetings, how she tends to organize and promote those among her team.
So we do a monthly trainer team meeting, even though we are a small team. And I'm very lucky that my trainers have all grown very close with each other. I still want to set aside 1 hour a month that is required of them just to have a check-in.
Mhm.
So we've been doing it for almost 2 years now. So it's kind of the expectation with the team. They know I bring in some treats because I don't want them to sit down and have me lecture them, because that's not fun for everyone. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming that because I see them so often, if there's important information I need to communicate to them, I've done so already. I've done so either one-on-one or via email, or I'm not waiting until it's the first Tuesday of the month to sit down with my team and communicate something important with them. So I try to make it somewhat fun. One time we did trainer Jeopardy. or it was Anatomy Jeopardy. So we printed off some, anatomy pictures, and I'd be like, for 200 points, who can show me where the bicep is, whatever it is. And we made it fun. They broke up into teams. It was a good time. You can see which trainers are competitive, which ones aren't. And then we would do the housekeeping items, logistical things afterwards, because there's always things like making sure that your schedule is accurate, making sure that you're answering emails in 24 hours, whatever logistical reminders that they might need, because they're human and they may have forgotten something, but you don't necessarily want to call out Susie who forgot to answer your last email within 24 hours. So it's just a good time for some general housekeeping reminders as well. And just keeping it fun and giving them a time to air some grievances, ask questions about some clients that they might be having difficulty with. Getting some expertise from some other peers is a good opportunity for them as well. So I love our trainer meetings. I think they're fantastic.
I love it. And there's something to say too. Like, I love that you bring up some housekeeping items in the meeting. I enjoy that too myself, because sending it in a blanket statement email is not as valuable. There's something about a human being just approaching it and saying, hey, everyone, we've now gone through saying hi to everyone, making a connection with everyone. There's this like positive air in the space. Now let's talk about working together and really bringing to light some improvements we need to make as a team. That's much more beneficial than, in my opinion, when someone and I've totally done this before, all of us have done this before, where you shoot an email off because you are so frustrated with one or two people who are just not doing something, and you really should go through the steps of waiting for the team meeting to happen, or waiting for the time to actually talk to them in person as an individual. But instead you shoot off this like email that's like, hi everyone, love you guys. By the way, turn off the mic in the freaking Studio A studio because I'm so sick of this battery dying and I keep replacing it. And then guess what? The people who are turning off this microphone are going to think that you're talking to them. And the person who isn't doing it is going to think, oh, that's not me. So it really isn't effective. But in a team meeting, I feel like it can be much more effective. I do a very similar thing with our team. So before I took over this team that's virtual and across the country, they never had team meetings before. And the revolving door of people just leaving the company was happening because they had no connection with any form of leadership. And if you are a manager who leads a team remotely, you can't just fly across the United States and jump into their class at 11 a.m. So what you have to do is do a team meeting and then make sure they know and understand that you're available for them. So I do something very similar to Jessica. I can't make it mandatory, so that's the difference. Is she's working with employees, I'm working with independent contractors. So she's still going to make it really valuable, but she can say you have to be there or your like job is in jeopardy kind of thing, which is really helpful as a leader because you can make sure they're there. In my case, I have to just try to make it as valuable as possible and then make it as easy for them to digest because they're on 4 different time zones. So what I do is, so let's back up a little bit. In the second stage of onboarding, first stage is to make sure you're visible. So I'm still constantly reaching out to the team about new things I'm finding in the industry, about updates on the team, how we're growing and how maybe we're hiring new people or we're gaining some new business across the country. So they're still aware of what's going on, but the team meeting is the second stage to, I think, like Jessica said, getting everyone together and getting everyone to enjoy each other's company. So what we do, and I know what Jessica does, is we come up with basically a theme. So in her past Jeopardy muscle, like that sounds amazing, that fun kind of game theme. We've done things like bringing in presenters before during our meeting to do like a quick presentation on something. Right now we're really focusing with the team on seniors. So the instructors who've been coaching seniors or the experience I have with seniors, we just bring it up during the meeting and then I send a recap. So what I would recommend too is to continue the education of your team, is especially if you can't see them once a month, like I said, you can't require them to come to the meeting, then you should send the invite, make it virtual and in person if you can. I can't do that with my team, but if you can have people come in person, I think the pandemic taught us that. And actually, at the club Jessica and I used to work at together, after even the pandemic was done, we still had some instructors who were uncomfortable with coming in. So we would have half of the team virtual and half of them in the studio space. So you can still keep doing that. And then you can record the meeting and share the recording with the people who weren't able to make it. It's also a nice chance for people to maybe rewatch it if they were like missing things, or maybe they were at home trying to watch virtually and their kids were getting upset. They could rewatch it, and always making it somewhat valuable, like doing your best to make sure there's a form of discussion, people are engaged, how engaged are they? And I think that's actually something you should evaluate as a manager in this onboarding process. Is obviously you're always checking in on how your team is doing, but in these team meetings, making sure that they are participating. Just because they show up every time is not always enough. Like, make sure that they're providing something, and try to track that to the best of your ability. Then afterwards, send a recap. So share the recording, share some bullet points, and then of course share the housekeeping items that you may need to address. So, and then like Jessica said, I love too also saying some positives, some highlights, like who's maybe the coach of the month, or the new updates, and congratulating the team on something big that happened is really helpful for them to get excited. And then Jessica said providing treats. You should always have food.
Yes, I always provide treats. They are store-bought. I remember you always would bake treats.
Oh God, I
But
tried. Now it's like COVID. You can't do that anymore.
yes, pre-COVID, you always baked some goodies, which was very much appreciated. We all know I don't bake, so these are store-bought treats, but they are very much appreciated. Sometimes they're healthy, sometimes they're not so healthy. I'll kind of get a general consensus from the team because, you know, trainers, instructors, sometimes they're on a health kick and sometimes they just want all the goodies. So whatever they want, I'll just go to the store and get them, because I want them to enjoy themselves and know that it's not, even though it's part of their job, it's also a time where they can kind of relax and be themselves and open up, and don't have to take their job that seriously in that hour.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they can hear from each other too, because there's this magic about,
Definitely.
yeah, there's a magic about knowing, I mean, following HIPAA guidelines, obviously, but also knowing that they're having challenges with their clients, or, you know, opening the floor to hear their feedback on their
Yeah.
experiences makes it more like real for the other coaches to go,
Mhm.
oh wow, I'm actually experiencing that same thing myself. Or like
Yeah.
I've had that experience before.
Yeah.
But yeah, the food thing, if you, I mean, digitally, it's really hard to do that unless you ship something to everyone. But so we don't necessarily do that. But if you do anything in person, I highly recommend having food. It just makes it easier, better.
And it's another incentive to get them
Yeah.
your meeting area, because they're
Mhm.
not, we know fitness professionals are not going to turn down some food.
Yeah,
So if there's
they
food,
need it.
they will be there.
They need it, exactly. And then
Yeah.
in some cases, if you can, I mean, again, if it's in your means, if you can provide childcare, that's just another
Mhm.
possibility,
Yeah,
to
definitely.
provide your team. Um, but but yeah, so I mean, I think we've approached the cadence that we check in with our team. I know Jessica said she tries to see her team as, if you can, if it's small, like she said, every day. Why not? If you really can, every day. And then if it's larger, what we did at the previous facility we worked at with over 100 teachers or instructors and trainers, we did once a year. Like that was
Mhm.
maybe twice a year to see different
Yeah.
formats. And
Mhm.
then after, and then team meetings. So visibility, team meetings, consistent outreach. And then the last
Mhm.
thing for me as far as onboarding is that annual review. And
Mhm.
the annual
So
review,
important.
yeah, exactly. The annual review, in my opinion, shouldn't be your one opportunity to give them feedback. So someone
Right.
I just recently listened to on a like human resources podcast, she had said, well, annual reviews are out the door now because you should be seeing people, like new young employees want to be seen and talked to all the time. And I was like, well, I agree with her. You definitely need to you need to see your team as much as possible. But there is something special about having a set time on a set day once a year to celebrate their 1 year anniversary or their 6 year anniversary or their 30th anniversary, and to talk about what's going on and what they're planning on for the future. So you
Mhm.
do need to keep in touch with them throughout the year, but the annual review, in my opinion, is still really important. So how do you
Agreed.
go about that, Jessica?
So my club does not do annual reviews, which is something that, oh, Stacey, I struggle with that so hard because, like you, I find so much value in annual reviews, but I am constantly shot down from my superiors to do annual reviews with my trainers. So that is my struggle. So I am constantly, that's another reason why I'm constantly
Mhm.
visible throughout the club and seeing them and inviting them in. But I struggle with it because I can give them all the feedback in the world. But if it is time for an annual review and you are being essentially graded, and if
Mhm.
you have a potential raise in your future, then I want to have the ability to either say, yes, this raise is warranted, or be able to provide a reason why no, you're not getting a raise. And it is because of X, Y, and Z. And seeing them just in passing when I'm on the trainer floor is not the appropriate time to do so. An annual review would be the appropriate time to provide that feedback as to why you are or are not getting a raise. So that's one of
Mm.
the things that I currently struggle with the annual reviews because I find so much value in it. It's a, as you said, a great time to celebrate the instructor, but it's also a great time to see what's going on in your future. What are you planning, and have you been abiding by the expectations that have been set for you over the past year?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just that really formal opportunity to do so. So if it's in your means, if your club allows it, like Jessica was saying, in some cases they don't, or they, because the investment is there. What you need to ask for usually in an annual review is you have to pay them for their time for that hour to happen. So that is actually something I cannot do with this team at the moment because I don't feel comfortable asking them to give me an hour of their time or more without being able to pay them. So I do not actually, this is my confession to everyone, after I'm such a proponent for annual reviews, I do not do them with this team, but I also have found this newfound love for group reviews. So that is something that I do with this new team I work with, where it's more like a mini team meeting. So I aim to do it once a quarter with a different group. So in this case, since we are more regional, I try to do like the Denver coaches or the New York coaches where they all jump in together. Or if you work with a large group fitness team and you don't do annual reviews, individual ones, you could do just the Zumba instructors, just the yoga instructors. And it's something we did in the pandemic because our club couldn't afford to do annual reviews.
Do you have another Amazon delivery?
I don't know. I would be very surprised if we did. Um, please stop. Please don't. But in the annual review, whether it's a group or it's one on one, you have to prepare questions. So you have to give whoever you're meeting with an idea of what you're going to ask them, things that they're going to need to be presenting to the annual review. And like Jessica said, what have you done this past year is a good question. What have you learned, or how has your teaching and evolution changed? And that's been really fun. I know that's my favorite question to ask people
That's a
in,
good question.
in annual reviews because the ones who are like just that ego driven, they have such a hard time saying anything about like changing the way they teach or the way
Mhm.
they coach. They're like,
Yeah, because they
oh,
think
I've
they're
done,
perfect, and they're like,
yeah,
"Yeah, I
I've
haven't changed
changed.
anything. I'm amazing."
That's been an answer in writing I've had many times, which is unfortunate, but doesn't mean they can't continue working with you. But it is a fun question. I love that question because then the ones who do have a really good answer are the ones who are, growing and evolving. They're like, oh, the pandemic was a great time for us to all learn how to be better
Yeah.
instructors.
And that's such a good answer too. Like
Yeah.
when in doubt, just say, "Oh yeah, it's the pandemic."
Yeah.
Just learn from it. Like
Yeah.
that's all you need to say. Oh, okay, I agree with you. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, during the pandemic, when we did these group reviews, one of our questions was, "What are lessons you've learned this year?" And the lessons we would get from them in these reviews were so fun to hear because they were so in depth. They weren't just about teaching. A lot of them, they were like, "My life has changed because I've recognized the things I'm grateful for in life," and so it could
Yeah,
be fun to hear from them sharing that information.
yeah, I love that.
Then another question I usually ask in that preparing for an annual review, whether it's group or individual is, like we said, the plans for the future. What are you doing next year? What conferences do you want to go to? What continuing education do you want to do? How are you going to continue improving how you do class? And then we actually started asking them, when do you want to film your class? Which was like pulling teeth before the pandemic, but it's become much easier now to ask people to
Yeah.
film and share that with us,
Great. Mm-hmm.
which is so nice. And it's good for them to just watch it themselves. Even if they don't show it to you, they should
Mm-hmm.
just watch it themselves, and they'll, whether it's personal training or it's group
Mm-hmm.
fitness, watching themselves train a client is like more valuable than anything you and I could ever give them, like telling them.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring up annual reviews because I feel like once you ask them those questions, you can also ask them to evaluate you as a leader. There could be a piece in there where it could be, them doing it individually, or you could have the team do it. I have done that before, a survey monkey on myself, and it was really hard, but it was really helpful. So do take time to evaluate your team, evaluate yourself, and that's, I think, part of that continued onboarding with your team
Mm-hmm.
to make sure. And it's just going to keep them
I
motivated,
love that.
continue to help them stay connected with you. And then you should be hosting a lot of education too, that in-house
Yeah.
or out of house, they should get hopefully a continuing education budget. Your team
Mm-hmm.
should. This is, again, perfect world. We all can provide this. And a strategy, actually, I'll throw that out there, and this could be maybe a future podcast, but a strategy we did at the facility we worked at was we developed a contract where the only way we could convince the club to pay for something extensive like a Pilates training was for the instructor to sign a contract, basically to share that they will pay it back in the amount of time or sessions they would teaching. So it's
Mm-hmm.
something you can curate. It's something that maybe we'll share a PDF of to help managers build that yourself. But education needs to be part of your continued value as a facility to keep them around. So
Absolutely. It's so important. And there's so much education out there. I feel like sometimes trainers and instructors don't really know what to look for. So if you can offer it to them in-house, then they don't really need to look very far. There's no reason for them not to get the education that they need.
yes. Anything else, Jessica, before we go on onboarding, like continuing to just stay in touch with your team and keep them motivated that you do or can think of?
The only thing that is really crossing my mind right now is with the annual reviews, and this might go without saying, but even if you're trying to celebrate the instructor because they've been there for X amount of years and they've done such a great job, still keep it as in a professional setting. Stacey, I remember at our old house club, we would divvy up the reviews, if you remember. So we would alternate who was going to do a review for who. And I remember I was going back and forth with this one instructor, just trying to schedule a time with her to do her review. And she and I both taught at the same time on Monday nights, just different classes. And she was just like, well, how about after our class, we just go up to the bistro, grab some drinks, and we could do our review there. Do you remember this? And that still to this day blows my mind. And Stacey, I wonder if you can guess who this instructor is. But just don't do it over drinks. Do it in a professional setting. Do it in your office or over Zoom or somewhere where there's not alcohol involved, because you are still their leader. I did not take this instructor up on this, by the way, Stacey. But yeah, keep it professional, because you are still essentially their superior, trying to go over, just ethics and professionalism with them in the review. So that's the only other thing I could think of when we're talking about reviews and onboarding.
No, I'm so glad.
It goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Keep it professional.
Yes, I agree. Because there's something that formal about this that can be really valuable.
Yeah.
That adds value to it, is the formality of it. You can hopefully meet up for drinks anytime with that person.
Yeah, and as managers, sometimes we grow close with some of our instructors, and some of our instructors might be more like friends versus, your subordinates. But at the same time, at the end of the day, especially when it comes to an annual review, you are still their manager, their director, and there needs to be a level of professionalism involved. So that means go do your review, and then after the review, change out of your uniform, out of your teaching gear, and then go out for drinks to celebrate. But the review needs to be done in a professional manner.
Agreed. No, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. I can't think of any other thoughts, but I think we dove through a lot of things. I know it can be
Oh
overwhelming as a
yeah.
manager to think about all the times you have to and need to connect with your team, but it's totally worth it. And you'll keep your team longer, which we know is so much easier than hiring new people. So
Yeah.
go for it. Give it a try.
Yeah.
Add those meetings, add those times you need to hop up off of your desk on your calendar, and that will help make it easier too. I
That's a
even
great
created
tip.
a spreadsheet, I think, for seeing people. Like I had like their name at the top and then the months at the bottom, and then I would put an X on like when I had seen each instructor each month.
I would totally believe that. Like a little alarm works for me, like a little notification, like go walk around to go see whoever. Like,
Mhm.
oh, let me just put my
Mhm.
email down so that way I can go and make sure that
Do it.
I'm taking the time to connect with them in person.
Yeah, do it. I love it. I love it. So next episode, which is coming very soon, is going to be I'm going to call it the compensation equation, which is perfect
Ooh, I like
after
that.
after this episode because we've now talked about, the need to stay connected with your team, to stay involved in their lives as they continue to work with you and the stories that we've shared, but now it's time to talk about we know in the fitness industry how complicated pay can be, and we'll
Mm.
do our best to share our advice, share our experience in episode 8 of Confessions of a Fitness Manager. So coming to you next. Thank you so